Mr. Ellis Johnson had taught at Riverside High for 23 years, yet most students walked past him as if he were a shadow on the wall. He was the kind of man whose presence was gentle, whose voice never rose, and whose patience felt endless. Some teachers dominated classrooms with charisma or authority. But Mr. Johnson? He taught with silence, softness, and a warmth that didn't scream to be noticed. And because of that, most people didn't notice him at all. Room 12 was tucked at the far end of the hallway, the forgotten room. The tiles were older. The paint chipped. Even the sunlight seemed to fade before reaching his desk. And yet, every morning, Mr. Johnson arrived early, arranging chairs neatly, writing the day's question on the board in perfect cursive, and humming old jazz songs his grandmother used to play. Students respected him, but not deeply. They sat in his class, completed his assignments, and moved on. No one asked about his life. No one lingered after school. No one wondered why a teacher as brilliant as he was still waited for anyone to see the weight he carried. Until one year, a new student arrived. Her name was Nia Carter, a quiet black girl with headphones always around her neck, hoodies oversized enough to hide inside, and eyes that held more story than she ever let out. She sat in the back, barely spoke, and tried to disappear into the same invisibility that Mr. Johnson lived with every day. But on the second week of class, she stayed behind as everyone else rushed out. Mr. Johnson. She hesitated. Your question today, about what home feels like. He looked up from grading papers. Yes. I didn't know what to write. She shifted nervously. I don't really know what home feels like anymore. He didn't push her. Didn't pry. Just nodded gently. That's all right, Nia. Sometimes the hardest questions in life are the ones we answer slowly. Those words, soft, patient, warm, were the first kindness she had felt from an adult in months. From that day forward, she stayed after class almost every day. Sometimes she asked real questions. Sometimes she pretended to, just to talk. Over time, she learned something no one else knew. Mr. Johnson was sick. He hid it well, too well, but occasionally his hands shook, and sometimes he winced when standing. When she finally asked, he simply smiled. Just tired bones, he said. But his eyes said otherwise. Nia wasn't convinced. One afternoon, she entered room 12 early and found a folder left open on his desk. She shouldn't have looked, but she did. Doctor's reports. Chemotherapy schedules. A note scribbled in his handwriting. Finish this semester. Make it to graduation. Her heart dropped. She froze when she heard footsteps. He had returned sooner than expected. Their eyes met. She panicked. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to see. But instead of anger, his face softened with the deepest exhaustion she'd ever seen. You weren't supposed to worry, he whispered. Why didn't you tell anyone? Because I didn't want pity. I wanted to teach. She didn't know what broke her more, the illness, or the fact that he carried it alone. From that day, Nia changed. She became his quiet guardian, picking up fallen chalk, carrying books, pretending she needed extra help just so he wouldn't stay late alone. Slowly, other students noticed. She started telling them small things. Mr. Johnson stays after school every day. He grades all our essays by hand. He actually listens. And for the first time in years, a few started to pay attention. But it still wasn't enough. Not for a man who had given his whole life to a school that barely remembered his birthday. Then, one morning in October, Mr. Johnson didn't show up. No message. No substitute lesson plan. Just an empty desk, the chalk untouched, and a quiet that felt wrong. Students murmured. Some shrugged. But Nia, her hands shook the moment she saw his chair still pushed in. She ran to the front office. One phone call later, she learned the truth. Mr. Johnson was in the hospital. And he might not be coming back. The moment the receptionist told her, "He's been admitted, he collapsed this morning," Nia felt the world tilt. Her vision blurred, her throat closed, and for a few seconds she couldn't breathe. Mr. Ellis Johnson, the man who quietly held her broken pieces together, was lying in a hospital bed alone. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't wait for an adult. She bolted out of the office and ran toward the courtyard where students were gathering for lunch. People stared as she climbed onto one of the benches, trembling, tears streaking down her face. Most students barely knew her name. But today, they would. "Everyone listen," she shouted, her voice cracking through the air. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Her chest heaved as she tried to speak. "It's Mr. Johnson," she said. "He collapsed this morning. He's in the hospital." A quiet rippled through the courtyard. Confusion. Then annoyance. Then indifference. Someone near the front shrugged. "Teachers get sick all the time." "No," Nia snapped, her voice sharp with a pain none of them understood. "You don't get it? He's really sick. Cancer sick." A hush fell over the crowd. "He's been coming here every day, pretending he's okay. He teaches even when he can barely stand." Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. "And none of us noticed. None of us cared enough to notice." Faces softened. Some looked down at their shoes. A few looked guilty. "He's been alone," she whispered. "Going through all of that, alone." For the first time, her pain cracked the hardened shell of indifference around the students of Riverside High. Because deep down, every student knew they had one teacher they never fully appreciated: the quiet one, the patient one, the one who never made a fuss. For Riverside, that teacher was Mr. Ellis Johnson. A boy from the football team stepped forward. "Is he gonna be okay?" "I don't know." Tears rolled again. "But he needs us. For once in his life, he needs us." That sentence lit something in the courtyard, something urgent, something collective. Students whispered to one another. Some wiped their eyes. Others looked immediately at the school building, as if realizing the man who had spent decades caring for them had slipped through the cracks. Finally, someone asked, "What can we do?" Nia didn't have a plan. She just had fear, grief, and the desperate hope that maybe they could make a difference. But another student, Maya from the yearbook club, raised her hand slowly. "We could write cards. Like a whole wall of them." "And videos," another suggested. "Like a message from every class he ever taught." "He loves jazz," an older student said. "We can play it outside his room when he comes back." "He's not coming back right now," Nia said quietly. "He's too sick." The crowd fell silent again. Then one voice rose, a soft, unexpected one. "We should visit him," said Lucas, the kid who always sat in the last row and never spoke up. "Yeah," Maya added. "Not all of us at once, but we can organize something." Within minutes, what started as a burst of grief became a full movement. Groups formed. Plans emerged. Students who never talked to each other exchanged numbers. Teachers who overheard stepped in, not to shut it down, but to help organize. Because they all knew, Mr. Johnson was the man who never asked for help. So now they would help loudly, unapologetically, wholeheartedly. But the biggest shift came the next day. A school-wide announcement echoed through the hallways. "All students and staff are invited to the library this afternoon for a meeting regarding Mr. Johnson." The room overflowed, students lining aisles, teachers leaning against walls, even the principal standing near the front looking more shaken than anyone had ever seen him. When Nia walked in, the crowd parted for her. She didn't expect it. She didn't want attention. But in that moment, she was the voice they had all needed. The principal cleared his throat. Nia, would you please come up? Her heart pounded as she stepped onto the small platform. Her hands shook so hard she had to grip the podium for balance. I didn't mean to start all this, she began. I didn't want him to feel invisible anymore. She took a breath. He's the only teacher who made time for me. Who saw me. Who never made me feel like I was a burden. Mr. Johnson didn't just teach English. He taught kindness. Patience. Listening. And we ignored him. A few students wiped tears. So let's show him we see him now, she whispered. And then she held up a notebook. Write something. Anything. One sentence about how he changed your life. Even if it's small. When she opened it, dozens of entries were already written from students she didn't even know. He taught me how to believe in myself. He was the only adult who said he was proud of me. His comments on my essay made me think I mattered. He saved my life without knowing. The room broke. People cried. Teachers included. That night, Riverside High stayed open until nearly 10 p.m. filled with students writing letters, drawing pictures, recording videos, and planning something none of them had ever imagined. A school-wide assembly dedicated entirely to the teacher they had overlooked. And all of it was for one man. One quiet black teacher in room 12. Who had finally been seen. The hospital room was small, too white, and far too quiet for a man who once filled a classroom with the soft hum of jazz. Machines beeped steadily beside him, and the gray morning light settled gently across his blankets. Mr. Ellis Johnson lay propped against his pillows, thinner than before, breath softer, eyes closed not in sleep, but in the heavy stillness of someone carrying pain quietly. When the door creaked open, he thought it was another nurse. But when he looked up, his breath hitched. Nia. She stood half frozen in the doorway, clutching a notebook to her chest. Behind her were Maya, Lucas, and a small group of students who had insisted on coming with her. Only 3 were allowed inside at a time, but they had all walked together, hearts pounding, palms trembling. Nia stepped forward slowly. Hi, Mr. Johnson. He smiled, gentle, tired, but real. You're supposed to be in school. We are, Maya said softly from behind Nia. But today, school is here. He tried to chuckle, but the sound came out weak. You kids shouldn't fuss over an old man like me. We're not fussing, Lucas replied. We're finally paying attention. That silenced him. Nia moved closer, taking the seat beside his bed. How are you feeling? He hesitated, then sighed. No lies today. Hurting, he whispered. And exhausted. But seeing you all, his eyes softened. This helps. For a moment none of them spoke. The hum of machines filled the silence. Then Nia handed him the notebook, the same one she'd brought to the assembly. The same one overflowing with words from students who once barely acknowledged him. What's this? He asked. Read it, she said. His frail fingers traced the cover before he opened it. The first message made him choke up instantly. You made me believe I could write again. Amber. He turned the page. You were the only teacher who told me I was smart. Devin. Another page. You never gave up on me. So I won't give up either. Maria. His hands shook. His eyes glistened. You kids, he didn't finish the sentence. Nia leaned closer. You mattered, Mr. Johnson. More than any of us ever said. He blinked rapidly, tears slipping down his cheeks. I've taught for 23 years, he whispered. Some days I wondered if I made any difference at all. You did, Nia said firmly. For all of us. He closed the notebook gently, pressing it to his heart. Then he looked at them with something deeper than gratitude, something that felt like peace. Can I ask you something? He said quietly. They nodded. Why now? His voice was fragile, unsure. Why did you finally see me? Nia swallowed hard. Because I was invisible too, until you saw me first. He reached out to touch her hand, and she held it tightly, careful not to hurt him. This school, it moves fast, Maya said. We never slow down long enough to see the people who care quietly. You were never loud, Lucas added. But you were there. Always there. He nodded, absorbing every word. After a moment, he said, I wanted my classroom to be a home for anyone who needed one. A place where being quiet was okay. A place where listening mattered. You did that, Nia whispered. You built that home. A nurse peeked in, reminding them to keep the visit short. But Mr. Johnson lifted a finger politely. Just a minute more, he murmured. The nurse nodded and left. He looked at the three students in front of him, the ones who had once blended into hallways, lost in their own struggles. Now they stood as his unexpected protectors. I want to teach you one last lesson, he whispered. They leaned in. It's the one I should have said sooner. His eyes closed briefly as he gathered his strength. Don't wait to appreciate people. Don't wait until they're gone to tell them they mattered. Say it now. Show it now. Give people their flowers, while they can still smell them. Tears streamed down Maya's face. Lucas covered his mouth, trying not to sob. And one more thing, he added, voice fading but firm. Kindness is never wasted. Even when it feels unseen. It grows somewhere you can't see yet. Nia broke. Tears fell freely. You taught us that, she whispered. And now everyone at school knows it too. He placed a trembling hand on her cheek, gentle, fatherly. I'm proud of you, Nia. Of all of you. Those words hit her like sunlight after months of rain. A teacher with barely any strength left had given them a final lesson, one that would echo for the rest of their lives. The nurse returned, this time with a soft, apologetic smile. They had to go. They stood slowly, reluctant. As they reached the door, Mr. Johnson called out, voice barely audible. Tell them. I love them. Nia nodded, tears falling. We will. When the door closed behind them, she pressed her forehead against the wall and cried silently. Maya wrapped an arm around her. Lucas quietly wiped his eyes. And though none of them said it out loud, they all felt the same thing. This wasn't the end. Not yet. There was one more thing they needed to do. And that moment would change the school forever. The auditorium at Riverside High had never been this silent. Every seat was filled, students, teachers, custodians, cafeteria workers, even parents who had heard what was happening. A hush settled over the room, the kind that only appears when everyone is holding their breath at the same time. On stage, the lights dimmed except for one gentle spotlight aimed at a wooden chair placed at the center. A chair meant for a teacher who might never sit in it again. At the back of the room, Nia stood with Maya and Lucas. Her hands clutched the notebook of letters now too thick to close, and her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear the principal beginning to speak. Today, Principal Harris said, voice shaky, we honor a man who has spent 23 years giving his heart to this school, quietly, humbly, and far too unnoticed. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, guilt echoing through the silence. But not anymore. A soft murmur rippled across the room. Before we start, he continued, I want to be transparent. Mr. Johnson is still in the hospital. He wanted to be here, and we wanted him here. But his doctors said he needed rest. A wave of sadness swept through the auditorium. But, the principal added, we're recording everything. Every word, every performance, every message. He will see all of this. Applause rose, gentle at first, then building into a warm, emotional wave. When it died down, he nodded toward the students waiting backstage. Let the assembly begin. The choir. The first group to step onto the stage was the school choir students who had often passed Mr. Johnson in the hallways without ever saying hello. Today, their eyes were red and swollen. They began singing one of his favorite jazz pieces, transforming it into a soft, soulful vocal tribute. The melody drifted through the auditorium like a memory, warm, gentle, and full of the tenderness he had taught without words. Some students in the crowd cried quietly. Others held hands. The letters. Next came 3 students reading selected notes from the notebook Nia had collected. A shy girl from freshman year stepped up first. "I never told you this," she read, voice trembling, "but you were the first adult who said you believed in me. That one sentence stopped me from quitting school." Another student read, "You didn't just teach English. You taught me to feel seen." A third added, "I hope you know how many lives you saved just by listening." The auditorium broke, sniffles, tears, heads bowed. The teacher's turn. Then the teachers came forward, some of whom had worked beside him for decades. Mrs. Alvarez, the math teacher, wiped her glasses and said, "Ellis used to leave chalk on my desk every Monday because he knew I kept losing mine. I didn't even ask. He just noticed." Coach Daniels added, "He tutored kids after school every day even when no one showed up. He waited anyway." One by one, the adults who had overlooked him now stepped forward with stories of quiet kindness they had never appreciated until now. Nia's moment. Finally, Principal Harris stepped back to the microphone. "Our final speaker today is the student who reminded us of something we should have known all along." He didn't need to say her name. Every head turned as Nia walked slowly onto the stage. Her legs shook. Her breathing trembled. But when she reached the podium and looked out at the sea of faces, something steadied inside her. She opened the notebook. "I met Mr. Johnson on the first week of school," she began. "I was invisible. I think he knew, because he had been invisible too." The room leaned in. He didn't ask for attention. He didn't need applause. He just cared. Quietly. Patiently. Even when no one cared back. A tear slipped down her cheek. "I found out he was sick by accident. And I realized something that hurt more than anything: he was hurting, and nobody knew because none of us paid attention." She swallowed hard. "But he noticed us. All of us. Even the ones who faded into the back of the room. He listened when we didn't speak. He saw us when we hid. And he taught us the most important lesson of all." Her voice cracked. "Give people their flowers while they can still smell them." A soft sob echoed from somewhere in the front row. "So today, this is us giving him his flowers. Every song. Every letter. Every tear. Every thank you we never said." She closed the notebook slowly. "I hope he feels all of it." Silence filled the room, full, heavy, sacred. And then, the auditorium doors opened. Everyone turned. And gasps filled the air. Supported by a nurse on one side and a cane on the other, Mr. Ellis Johnson stepped inside. He was frail. Pale. Moving slowly. But he was standing. Walking. Smiling. The crowd rose in a wave, cheering, crying, clapping, shouting his name. Some students covered their mouths in shock. Others sobbed openly. Teachers hugged each other. Nia froze on stage as he made his way down the center aisle, trembling but determined. When he reached the front, he looked up at her. And through the tears in his eyes, he whispered, "Thank you, for seeing me." She ran into his arms, careful, gentle, and he held her with what little strength he had left. The auditorium erupted again. Because in that moment, the invisible teacher wasn't invisible anymore. He was loved. He was honored. He was finally seen. And for the rest of Riverside High's history, no assembly would ever match the day they came together. To give a quiet black teacher his flowers before it was too late.